Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2015 Army Aviation Hall of Fame induction ceremony. May I please have your attention as we introduce our honored guests this evening. Major General Michael D. Lundy, Commanding General, United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence. 2015 inductee, Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Carl H. Meyer, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired Randy Jones. Mrs. Leslie Ponder, representing her husband, the late Master Sergeant James W. Ponder, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Command Sergeant Major retired Buford Thomas. Mr. Wayne Bloomquist, representing his brother, the late Lieutenant Colonel Paul A. Bloomquist, escorted by Hall of Fame member, Colonel retired Doug Moore. And ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Army Aviation Hall of Fame, Dr. Colonel retired Hal Kushner.
Posting of the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Honored guests, fellow inductees, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame's 22nd induction ceremonies. Please silence your cell phones, charge your glasses, and join me for a toast. Here's to our inductees and our military people overseas, particularly those in harm's way and their families, and past, present, and future warriors who protect freedom worldwide. Hear, hear. Please take your seats. In this last year since we gathered, we've lost three of our true hero Hall of Fame members. Bataan Death March survivor and Quad A president and former commander of the 101st Airborne Division, Lieutenant General retired Jack Wright. Past National Quad A and Scholarship President, Colonel retired John Marr. And our Quad A founder, Art Keston. Let's take a few minutes to recognize these men.
Lieutenant General Jack Wright graduated from West Point in 1940. Captured on Corregidor by the Japanese, he was a prisoner of war for 3 years and 4 months, enduring the worst kind of depraved, inhuman, and demoralizing conditions. After the Korean War and a tour in Germany, he was assigned as Assistant Division Commander of the 11th Air Assault Division Test, an experimental unit formed to test and evaluate air mobile concepts at Fort Benning, Georgia. He qualified as a helicopter pilot, and in 1965, the division was reorganized as the 1st Cavalry Division Air Mobile and deployed to Vietnam. He returned to combat in 1969 as the commanding general of the 101st Airborne Division. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1980. Colonel retired John W. Marr was assigned to Company G of the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and on June the 6th, 1944, he was dropped at night behind enemy lines with the 82nd Airborne Division. Lieutenant Marr saw action almost immediately after landing near Saint-Mère-Église, where he led a platoon in what has been called one of the costliest small unit actions in United States Army history at the Battle of La Fière Causeway. After fighting in Normandy, Marr was put in command of Company B of the 507th during the Battle of the Bulge and continued to lead the company as it was spearheaded for the Operation Varsity, his second combat jump, crossing the Rhine River on March the 24th, 1945. He returned to the U.S. in September of 45, married his sweetheart Willa, and continued his career in the Army, earning his Army Aviator wings and eventually commanding the 17th Combat Aviation Group in Vietnam. He was inducted in 1986. Art Keston joined the Army as a liaison pilot flying Piper Cub L-3s with the 11th Airborne Division and served as a member of the U.S. occupation forces in Japan from 1945 to 1948, earning his jump wings while deployed. He founded Army Aviation magazine in 1953 with his wife, Dottie, and the Army Aviation Association of America, Quad A, in 1957, and was inducted into the Army Aviation Hall of Fame together with Dottie in 1975. He served as Executive Vice President of the Quad A from the time of the association's founding until his retirement in 1989. Tens of thousands of Army aviators over the years have benefited from the legacy of Art Keston. He truly lived the Quad A motto, supporting the U.S. Army aviation soldier and family.
Ladies and gentlemen, instead of a moment of silence, let's have a big round of applause and appreciation of these three heroes. Thank you. Thank you. I have the lights in my eyes and I cannot see, but I know that Art's wife, Dottie, the co-founder of Quad A, and her son, Dale, are with us tonight. I can't see where, but would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you for all you've done for us. Tonight, we celebrate the 42nd anniversary of the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. Now, the Hall of Fame is a real hall. It's located at Fort Rucker, Alabama, where portraits and citations of the inductees cite their invaluable contributions to Army aviation. You should go there and you should visit it. Tonight, 3 individuals will join those inductees who have made an indelible mark on our branch and indeed upon organic Army aviation since its inception on 6 June 1942, 73 years ago. Counting our new inductees, there are only 158 people in the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. These people represent a broad spectrum of our community, including 100 commissioned officers, 26 warrant officers, 20 enlisted soldiers, 9 aviation industry individuals, and 3 government employees. Ladies and gentlemen, 17 members of our Hall of Fame have received the Medal of Honor. I would now like to introduce the President of the Army Aviation Association of America, Brigadier General Retired Howard W. Yellen, and his wife, Susan. Next, I would like the trustees of the Hall of Fame to please stand and be recognized. And joining them, all members of the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. Please stand and be recognized. Before we begin this evening's inductions, please welcome the Commanding General, United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence, Major General Mike Lundy, and his wife, Paula. They're sitting there. Thank you, sir. General Lundy, come up here and join me to help induct our new members into the Hall of Fame. While he's coming up, we have a person in the audience today, Mr. Sergei Sikorsky. He's 90 years old. His father is probably the inventor of the helicopter. Mr. Sikorsky, could you stand and be recognized? Thank you. Thank you. And now, it is my great privilege to begin the Army Aviation Hall of Fame 22nd induction ceremony. Our first inductee tonight is Master Sergeant James W. Ponder, deceased. Please direct your attention to the screens behind me. We can see the screens down here.
Master Sergeant James Ponder, nicknamed Trey, married his high school sweetheart, Leslie Miller, in September 1994. Well, just a few days after their wedding, Trey was called to duty with the Night Stalkers for Operation Uphold Democracy. The mission off the coast of Haiti had the 160th based on board the supercarrier USS America for 8 weeks. Well, Trey and Leslie would laugh later that Trey had gone on a 2-month honeymoon cruise all by himself, without Leslie. Master Sergeant James W. Ponder III was a native of Franklin, Tennessee. He loved to hunt and fish. Trey attended Auburn University for 3 years, and then, in 1990, surprised his family by enlisting in the Army. In 1992, after his initial deployment to Korea as a flight engineer, Ponder took the initiative to influence his assignment to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. He served in Bravo Company and progressed rapidly from MH-47 crew chief to flight engineer instructor in just 2 years. Master Sergeant Ponder was one of the first to deploy after 9/11 and played a major role in all combat actions in Afghanistan against both Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. He conducted more than 100 aviation missions supporting the most elite special ops forces in the world. These missions were often conducted in some of the worst terrain in the country, under zero illumination and high altitudes, channelizing valleys and brownout conditions. In the most challenging situations, pilots in his battalion always wanted Master Sergeant Ponder in the lead aircraft. His exceptional grasp of both mission requirements and equipment led to his early selection as a flight engineer instructor. He then developed a non-rated crew member trainer program that continues to be used today by other Army aviation units around the world. He consistently worked long hours and weekends to research new equipment and techniques for improving mission accomplishment that resulted in his writing and staffing new publications and crew member checklists. In 2002, while serving as Regiment MH-47EG standardization instructor, he was directly responsible for the combat readiness of 340 non-rated crew members across 4 battalions and 1 training company. He was responsible for writing and updating Army Special Operations Aviation non-rated crew member publications, training circulars, and was the primary advisor to the regimental commander and command sergeant major on non-rated crew member readiness and training. He also developed and updated tactics, techniques, and procedures, programs of instructions, and crew member operational checklists. His extraordinary dedication and work ethic resulted in some of the best employment techniques for the M134 minigun, the M240 machine gun, fast rope operations, external hoist operations, amphibious operations, and special vehicle operations, which were later adopted by all Army aviation units. Master Sergeant Ponder dedicated his military career to producing the finest aviation non-rated crew members in the world. His vision of how to revolutionize the MH-47 crew member training program changed and professionalized how Army Aviation trains all of its enlisted personnel, even to this day. On June 28, 2005, during his 4th rotation to Afghanistan, Master Sergeant Ponder was training on the day shift with the 3rd Battalion 160th when a 4-man Navy SEAL team called for help. The team was taking heavy enemy fire from an outnumbering force on a mountaintop of Kunar province in support of Operation Red Wing. Well, Ponder knew that he was more rested than the night crews who had just landed, and he volunteered to go with 7 night stalkers and a quick reactionary force of 8 SEALs. During an approach to the landing zone, Trey's MH-47 was shot down by an RPG. Always placing the needs of others above his own, Master Sergeant Ponder made the ultimate sacrifice to try to save his comrades in distress. Master Sergeant Ponder's contributions to our country and Army aviation will stand as a model for all future aviation soldiers to emulate. Although his military accomplishments are exemplary, he would probably have rather been remembered as a role model for his daughters, Samantha and Elizabeth, and as a loving husband who protected his family to the death. His lifetime aviation achievements have contributed significantly to the advancement of Army aviation and its place in the force of the future. Master Sergeant James Trey Ponder III is most worthy of election to the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
I now ask Mrs. Leslie Ponder to please come forward with your Hall of Fame escort, Command Sergeant Major, retired Buford Thomas. Mrs. Ponder would like to say a few words.
Whew. Didn't think I'd get this emotional. On behalf of our daughters, Samantha and Elizabeth, and Trey's parents, Rebecca and Jimmy, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We are so humbled for this honor for Trey. But if I'm to be completely honest, he would have hated all the attention. That's just him. Everything he did for the men. He did for the unit. He didn't want any recognition for himself. So to be here and to see all of this, it's very overwhelming for all of us. So I just wanted to say thank you. He and I had many, many conversations about his job and what he did and where he wanted to go with it. And just knowing that his legacy in Army aviation is going to continue forever is very humbling and very much an honor. So thank you all very, very much.
Also here to honor Master Sergeant Ponder are his daughters, Samantha and Elizabeth, his parents, James Sr. and Rebecca, Leslie's parents, Tom and Lydia Miller, and many other family, friends, and guests. Would you stand up and be recognized, please? Thank you. Our next inductee this evening is Chief Warrant Officer 5, Carl H. Meyer, retired. Please direct your attention again to the screens.
Carl Meyer graduated from high school, did a short stint at community college, and then enlisted in the Army. The fact that Carl's father was an Army veteran of the Korean War had absolutely no influence on Carl's decision to enlist. He had no grand visions of being a hotshot pilot. As he saw it, the Army simply offered him a great opportunity to get the heck out of town. Carl H. Meyer was born in San Francisco, California, on September 12, 1956. He was the oldest of 4 children. He enlisted in the United States Army in December 1975 and graduated from military police school. After completing airborne school at Fort Benning, and while he was assigned to the 118th MP Company Airborne at Fort Bragg, Meyer realized that he would rather have a job in the aircraft cockpit than one loaded up in the back. Meyer completed Warrant Officer Candidate School and earned his aviator wings in 1984. In July 1987, Chief Warrant Officer 5 Meyer successfully assessed to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Group Airborne. He quickly found that his favorite part of Army aviation was planning, briefing, and successfully executing the mission. The flying was a bonus. Carl Meyer's mission-focused attitude has had an immeasurable impact on special operations aviation. His involvement in every combat operation since 1987 places him at the pinnacle of special ops experience. In 1993, during his deployment to Somalia as the primary planner and flight lead for Task Force Ranger during Operation Gothic Serpent, Chief Meyer led the recovery operations of personnel who were injured after an MH-60 was shot down. Piloting the MH-6 Little Bird Star 41, he searched for and found one of the two Black Hawks just minutes after it impacted the ground. His co-pilot noticed a fallen soldier bleeding severely from his stomach. He was propped up against a wall. Landing in a big intersection near the wounded soldier would have been the easier option, but also would have left everyone vulnerable to enemy fire. Instead, with his co-pilot at the controls, Meyer navigated the bird up the street between two stone houses where they set down on a slope. While his co-pilot left Star 41 to help the wounded, Meyer used his aircraft to shield them while he engaged the numerically superior advancing enemy with his MP5. He expended hundreds of rounds through his door opening while his co-pilot extracted two critically wounded soldiers from the ground force. The mission earned Meyer a Silver Star. As the consummate and quiet professional for over 20 years, he declined telling his story to all who asked about that day. In addition to Operation Gothic Serpent in Somalia, Meyer participated in many others, including Operation Just Cause, Desert Storm, Uphold Democracy, and Joint Endeavor. Since 2003, Meyer deployed 5 times to Operation Iraqi Freedom and 7 times to Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. For over 2 decades, Chief Meyer has provided unsurpassed experience and leadership to help our country achieve its strategic objectives. In April 2006, Meyer was assigned as the first Regiment Chief Warrant Officer, guiding and mentoring the regiment's 300-plus warrant officers and supporting the regimental commander. When he retired in 2014, Meyer was the longest tenured Night Stalker in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. He has been in the unit since 1987. The majority of his time served in the same company, serving in every capacity, from platoon instructor pilot to regimental warrant officer. Chief Carl Meyer's 26-year impact on the 160th SOAR extends far beyond his personal achievements. His pioneering of night vision goggle techniques and procedures, which he developed and proved in more than 20 years of combat, revolutionized Army aviation effectiveness on the battlefield. His inputs to the Aircrew Training Manual continue to define modern Army aviation. Meyer's performance as a Night Stalker flight lead and consummate trainer mark him as the epitome of a special operations aviation officer. He has been a mentor and advisor to generations of aviators, commanders, and enlisted soldiers. His legacy will continue for many years to come as Night Stalkers uphold the high standards to which he trained them. It is impossible to overstate the significance of Chief Warrant Officer 5 Carl H. Meyer's 38 years of active service to Army aviation, the United States Army, and our nation. CW5 Meyer has clearly earned his place in the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Congratulations, Mr. Meyer. Please come forward with Randy Jones. Congratulations, Mr. Meyer. Would you like to say a few words, please?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'm pretty tense. Okay. General Lundy and honored guests, it's an honor to be here today with the families of Colonel Bloomquist and Master Sergeant Ponder. It's very, very humbling to be inducted with these two great men who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. Colonel Bloomquist and Master Sergeant Ponder are shining examples in the finest tradition of Army aviation, and they will remain so for many generations to come. I encourage our young men and women to strive to meet the high standards these men have set. It's a high bar, but even if they come close, our branch will be in good hands. I would like to thank General Lundy, General Yellen, Mr. Bill Harris, Dr. Hal Kushner, and the entire Quad A team for putting together this great event tonight. And also like to say thank you to the Piper and the Color Guard for their work tonight. Ms. Janice Arena, thank you for your hospitality, taking care of Cindy and I. Thank you, Mr. Ron Kaplan, for producing the wonderful videos and for not using my baby pictures. There are, of course, too many people to thank, and they're all responsible for me being here today. Really, this is all about the unit I came from, in my opinion, and I was very lucky. I was lucky to be accepted into the 160th as a relatively inexperienced aviator at a time when many of the hard lessons of this business were already learned. I was lucky to come to a unit that had handpicked leadership. In fact, I believe the best in the Army. Back when I showed up at the unit, it was a pretty small unit, and of the people that were in the leadership positions, when I showed up there, 9 or 10, I'm not sure which one, are now general officers. One of them is now the current president of Quad A, Howard Yellen. When Colonel Yellen was the regiment commander, he was burdened with trying to mentor me into becoming a competent staff officer, and I think despite his great efforts, he's very disappointed. I was lucky to have the best instructors, most of whom were plank holders in the unit. These soldiers were there pioneering this night vision goggle business from the very beginning. They were hard on me. I hated them for it, but I hold them in the highest regard for the training they provided me as directly responsible for me being here today. Some of these men, like Randy Jones and Bob Fladry, are here tonight, and they are in the Hall of Fame. Randy, thank you for escorting me tonight. You're still providing me with guidance. I was lucky to be in a unit with the very best crew chiefs, mechanics, avionics, sheet metal, rotor system repairers, and other important maintainers. This team of quiet professionals repairing and maintaining our aircraft held my life in their hands, and I trusted them completely. They hold a special place in my heart. I'm sure you know, when you fly a small single-engine aircraft into combat, especially in the mountains or in the desert or over water, miles from land, these special people are among the most important in an aviator's life. I can't leave this position without thanking all of them, our staff and ground support folks, for without their unceasing and unsung efforts, our mission would quickly grind to a halt. The toughest job in the military is the job of a military spouse. When their loved one goes to war, the spouse is the rock that keeps the family and the household steady. Actually, they do this when the soldier's home, too. But without their loving support, we soldiers would be lost in the woods. So I'd like to thank my wonderful wife, Cindy, for choosing me and for providing that important support. Having said that, since I retired, I'm sure she wishes that I would still deploy once in a while. In conclusion, I'm thinking I am walking proof that it's better to be lucky than good. Please remember all the men and women who are in harm's way right now, and most importantly, remember our fallen. I will never forget them. Thank you all for traveling here tonight, and I will leave you with two mottos. In honor of Colonel Bloomquist, the dust-off motto, which is dedicated, unhesitating service to our fighting forces, and as Trey Ponder would say, Night Stalkers don't quit. Thank you.
Here to help CW5 Meyer celebrate are his wife Cindy and his friends. Would you stand and be recognized? Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our final inductee of the night is Lieutenant Colonel Paul A. Bloomquist, deceased. Again, please direct your attention to the screens.
Dust-off pilot Paul Bloomquist was tough. He was proud. He was arguably defiant. He never wore a flak vest. He never fastened his helmet chin strap. It was always dangling. Well, Paul's nickname was Big Bear. He was charismatic. He inspired his fellow medevac pilots to emulate his mission comes first attitude and courage under fire. But the letters that he wrote home to his parents each week painted a totally different picture. Mom and Dad, the surf's good, the weather's fine, the beaches are beautiful. Paul A. Bloomquist was born in Orem, Utah on October 30th, 1932, and grew up in Salt Lake City. After graduating from the University of Utah, Paul enlisted in the Army with the goal of becoming an Army aviator. He graduated from the Helicopter Officers Course in 1954. His first assignment was with the 54th Medical Detachment Helicopter Ambulance in South Korea. Returning to the States, his keen aviator skills were called on during a massive snowstorm that blanketed much of the Northeast in the winter of 1958. Flying a UH-19 helicopter in extremely hazardous conditions, Lieutenant Bloomquist logged 55 rescue missions and made 62 drops of food, medicine, and emergency supplies to travelers, farmers, and villagers who'd been cut off by the heavy snow. Flying those missions earned him his first Distinguished Flying Cross. It was during his first Vietnam tour in 1964 that Captain Bloomquist distinguished himself as one of the Army's premier aviators and finest officers. He kept extending his stay in country, and during 21 months of daily combat flying was cited for heroism several times. Among his 4 Distinguished Flying Crosses, a Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts, and 36 Air Medals, one of his DFC actions reflects the courageous and dedicated pilot that he had become. On 21 June 1964, Bloomquist's helicopter was struck by enemy fire and he was wounded. He disregarded his own wounds and continued flying the remainder of the day and well into the night, logging nearly 13 hours of flight time until all of the casualties were evacuated. And only then did he seek care for his own wounds. Captain Bloomquist never refused a mission, no matter how bad the weather was or the enemy situation. He seemed to be happiest when flying the most challenging missions. Experienced, dedicated, and often bloody, Bloomquist was the personification of the Army medevac. He was an outstanding role model for the younger pilots in his unit. He was equally admired and respected by American advisors who were located at isolated outposts who depended on Bloomquist and his crew. In those early days of the war, communications were sporadic and support was austere. One veteran gunship pilot who used to escort Bloomquist and his crew on such missions said, quote, "Thank God for him and the rest of the brave crews who fought harder to save lives than we did to kill people," unquote. His heroic service in Vietnam earned Captain Bloomquist's selection as Quad A's Army Aviator of the Year in 1965. Major Bloomquist returned to Vietnam in April 1967, where he continued his mission-first attitude. His knowledge of combat flying and leadership skills proved especially valuable during the Tet Offensive of 1968, when thousands of American and Vietnamese servicemen and civilians were killed or wounded. After promotion to lieutenant colonel, Bloomquist was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division in Germany. This was a very difficult time in our nation's history, as there were rampant drug, social, and racial problems in the ranks. Bloomquist attacked these issues head-on and was quickly able to channel his soldiers' energies toward productive goals and maintain a high state of unit readiness. On 11 May 1972, after spending his normal long day at the office, Bloomquist walked across the street from the headquarters building to the officers' club to exchange dollars so he could take his wife to dinner. As he started up the stairs to the club, a series of 3 violent explosions rocked the place, killing him instantly. The notorious terrorist group, the Baader-Meinhof gang, claimed responsibility. Lieutenant Colonel Bloomquist is a dust-off hero and exemplar whose actions and selfless service represent the very highest traditions of Army aviation. Although his brilliant career ended far too early, he left behind a proud legacy of excellence, of dedication, and unmatched courage for all Army aviators and crews to emulate. It is especially fitting that Lieutenant Colonel Paul A. Bloomquist be enshrined in the Army Aviation Hall of Fame.
Accepting for the late Lieutenant Colonel Bloomquist is his brother, Wayne Bloomquist, who comes all the way from Utah. Please come forward with your Hall of Fame escort, Colonel Doug Moore. And I believe Colonel Moore would like to make a few remarks for the Bloomquist family. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kushner. That's hard. What an honor it is to be able to say a few words about a very close friend and my personal hero, Paul Bloomquist. But as I look out over this large audience that's here tonight, it saddens me to think that there's probably less than a handful of us here who actually knew Paul, and I may be the only one here who ever flew with him. With that in mind, I'd like to thank the Quad A for taking the information that we provided them and developing this wonderful film clip that you just saw, most accurate and certainly very stirring about his life. As the film indicated, Paul volunteered for Vietnam when it was still a Vietnamese war, an advisor war, arriving in February of 1964 when there were only 20,000 Americans there. I joined Paul shortly after the commander of our unit, another Hall of Fame member, Major Charles L. Kelly, was killed while flying a mission down in the Delta. Paul quickly took command, and his first order was very simple: mission first and get on with it. Now, Paul could be an unusual fellow, and I suppose that could be said about most Army aviators. But in those early days, 64, we didn't have the ceramic chest protectors that we got later on, things we call chicken plates. All we had were old hand-me-down flak vests, and Paul refused to wear one. And as the film said, he would never button the chin strap on his helmet. It was always flapping in the wind when we were flying. He didn't like the visor on our old SPH-4 helmets that we had in those days, the shaded visor. Instead, he insisted on wearing those big gold Ray-Ban aviator shades that were popular in those days. And even though Paul professed to be a devout atheist, we noticed he always had a St. Christopher's medal hanging around his neck when he was flying. Now, you ladies would have loved him. Paul was a tall, athletic, very muscular, good-looking guy who could have easily passed for a movie star. But the Paul Bloomquist I know was devoted to flying, and his true passion was rescuing the wounded. When his first tour ended, he extended 3 months, and then he extended again, and then again. And when asked by Peter Arnett, the famous Associated Press reporter, why do you keep extending and insisting on flying the most dangerous mission? Paul answered simply, because I like the excitement, and I think my crew and I can do this job better than anybody else. I wrote the recommendation in 1964 that led to Paul becoming the Army Aviator, Quad A's Army Aviator of the Year. The number 7, I guess it was, in that long line of succession since then. The following year, 1965, he was elected as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Young American of the Year, and Time magazine devoted an entire page in their magazine to his heroics. Paul's legacy from those early days is that he taught a whole generation of us youngsters, including me and my roommate at the time, a guy by the name of Pat Brady that some of you know, who went on to win the Medal of Honor and is a Hall of Fame member. But he also taught a bunch of other guys with names like Ernie Sylvester and Ed Taylor, and Jim Truscott, Tom Schofield, who came back later when they were more senior to command units in Vietnam and are responsible for building the medical evacuation system that we have deployed around the world today. After spending 3 years in Vietnam, Paul met a beautiful Army nurse who was a Vietnam veteran herself. They were soon married, and as the film said, they were off to their battalion command in Germany, where he was a victim of the Baader-Meinhof gang. As strange as it might seem, I was on my way back to Hunter Army Airfield at the time and was passing through the Dallas airport when I saw a flash on the news that a bomb had exploded at the I.G. Farben building at the Officers Club there in Frankfurt, and that an Army lieutenant colonel had been killed. I knew immediately it was Paul, and I suffered all the way back to Savannah before it was confirmed by a phone call from a friend of mine in the Pentagon that in fact it was Paul who was killed. Later, the military installation at Ziegenberg, some of you know, just north of Frankfurt there, was named Camp Paul A. Bloomquist in his honor. But it's been long closed, like so many of those small posts there in Germany, and Paul's memory has been fading fast. But now I know with his induction that young aviators and young enlisted crewmen will walk through that beautiful museum there at Fort Rucker and be able to see the pictures and read the citations of brave men and women who have made a difference in Army aviation. So I'm so proud for that. Unfortunately, Paul's wife died of cancer many years ago, and about the only living relative he has left is his brother Wayne here. And Wayne has graciously allowed me to talk about, as I said, my close friend and my personal hero, Paul. I want to thank Wayne for that opportunity, but he asked me in turn to particularly thank all of you who are still serving for your sacrifices that you're doing around the world today. And as an old Vietnam guy myself, I want to wish you and your families the best for the future. And as we used to say a long time ago, keep your heads down. In closing, I want to thank the Quad A for this wonderful honor for Paul. I want to thank the awards board for selecting him. And I particularly want to thank the Quad A leadership, especially Janice Arena and Bill Harris, for their help in making this happen. Thank you.
Also here to honor Colonel Bloomquist are his niece, Susan Ursis, and her husband, Kurt. Would you please stand and be recognized? Ladies and gentlemen, as you can imagine, there are a lot of moving parts to this production, and there are many, many people we owe thanks to for helping the Army Aviation Hall of Fame induct and salute our class of 2015. First, I would like to thank Mr. David Hartman, a great American actor and a former host of Good Morning America, who again volunteered to record the biographical videos honoring our new inductees. We almost had David here to do what I'm doing, but his wife had to have knee surgery at the last moment, and he couldn't come. I hope when you see this recording, David, that you understand how grateful we are to you. Thank you. And Ron Kaplan, thank you. And Ron Kaplan, our producer, as I said to General Yellen, this is like our Academy Awards without the politics. But Ron did a great job, and the whole Quad A team, particularly Bill Harris and the tireless Janice Arena. Thank you all very, very much. I want to thank you for your attendance this evening and for your continued outstanding support for the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. On behalf of all of its members, you have our deep gratitude for your support and your recognition. Now mark your calendars for the 23rd Hall of Fame ceremony in Atlanta this time, Atlanta, Georgia, on Friday night, 29 April 2016. I want to ask all of this evening's inductees, their families, friends, and escorts to remain in the vicinity just for a few minutes so Rennie can take some more pictures with the portraits. And meanwhile, let's give a final round of applause to our Hall of Fame class of 2015.